Hello and welcome to All in Motion. I'm your host, Jake. This is episode 21, part 3, The Life of a Combat Medic. I want to thank you all for taking the time to listen to this, what will be 3-part series. It's been amazing. I hope you all enjoy it. Again, please, if you have any feedback, I'd love to hear from you. It's allinmotionpodcast at gmail.com. And again, to Doc, really appreciate your time and energy and just everything. It's been a great experience. So again, I hope you all enjoy part 3, and thank you all, and Doc, thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, Doc Van Tuyl. There's one more story I know that we spoke about. It was you, and you can talk briefly about it. It was you and Doc Jarrett and an interpreter, and you guys were all by yourself.
Oh
So I
man,
hope I don't know if that's okay, if you still want to maybe share
yeah,
on it.
yeah. That's
So,
why
but
I have to laugh about it when you say it. I immediately remember the incident, and again, it's been so long that you forget the little minor details. But to keep it brief, there was a situation, and if I remember right, there was another squad. So it was the opposite of the story I just told. That I was the one, me and my squad were the ones responding to a firefight, and I just remember, we show up there and it was pointed out to you guys that were whoever. I don't even remember what squad it was, to be honest. Whoever the initial contact came. Um, but yeah, basically we show up to help and we dismount onto the trucks and we're laying on this berm in the wadi, the riverbed, and there's a compound that you had just taken fire from, and so the idea was to shoot a rocket at the compound and then, so to speak, rush the compound to destroy any remaining enemy, or gather intelligence, or what have you. And so somehow, some way, myself being a medic, I found myself with another medic, Doc Garrett, and then our interpreter was a local Afghani gentleman that agreed to help us and was assigned to us. Shout out to him. He's now here in in the States. He lives in Texas. He was in the Marines for a little bit, and he's a citizen of the U.S. So he went from being our interpreter to serving the United States Marine Corps, which I think is just an amazing story. But anyways, the three of us, the three most unlikely human beings to be grouped together to clear the second floor of a small mud building, two medics and an interpreter. And again, to make a long story short, we walked up these stairs and there was a little shitty wooden door, and I believe it was, man, I want to say it was Doc Garrett that kicked open the door, and so the door swings to the left, and it's just an open room, and there's some those pillows and those prayer rugs that they had in the rooms. I know you know what I'm talking about, and just basically lined the two edges of the room, and there were two windows, and at first we didn't see anybody. And I came in, and then we're basically getting ready to turn around and be like, hey, the room's clear, and go back down the stairs, and there was movement behind the door, and there was a local Afghani hiding behind the door. And uh we're trying to yell at him in the very little uh that we spoke, communicate to him to get down and surrender, and we are going to take him in. And then of course finally translated everything and was yelling at him, and he was animated, and we ended up detaining this young man. And because at that time it didn't make sense for a gentleman this age to be in this compound where we had just taken fire from. Um, it was our understanding that he was maybe not directly responsible, but obviously of age and capability to be responsible. So we immediately detained him, and ended up having to walk him back to one of the trucks. And if you remember right, I don't remember how much you remember about that mission that day, but that was a pretty big mission, and we detained quite a few. quite a few folks, and we had a whole truckload of guys that we brought back. We put them in an MRAP and drove them back to the base
Yeah, yeah,
and handed them off to other people. But
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I mean, just like you brought it up. It's just a very unlikely situation to find two medics, but it just speaks. I feel like I'm beating a dead horse when I say it, that combat is chaos, and it's just one of those things that you go where you're needed, and you trust your brother to your left and right, and you know the mission, and you got to go in this room and clear it. So be it if it's you and another medic and a local interpreter, you got a job to do and you get it done.
Right. Awesome. So overall, you spoke on it briefly. In your opinion, what do you think the difference is between the fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan?
Yeah, I'll keep it pretty brief because I've in my personal life, people ask me the same question. And, the best way for me and my personal experience in Iraq was it was dangerous in the sense that it was in Iraq and IEDs were a huge threat at that time. But it wasn't dangerous in the sense that I was with infantry and I was kicking in doors and I was searching for bad guys and going house to house and building to building. And so I didn't have that danger element to it. And for me as a medic, it was my main, thing. It was IEDs. IEDs were the big thing. It was convoys. Everyone drove everywhere. It was flat. You could see for miles unless you were in a, urban area where there were buildings and things were a little more treacherous. But for the most part, where I was and what I did was just open ground in the middle of nowhere in Iraq. And just you had to worry about the IEDs, and any casualties I treated were strictly, IED related or any and anything like that. And then in Afghanistan, it was very, very quick. I wasn't, I was a medevac, so it wasn't my job to return fire to the enemy. And if I was ever in contact in Iraq, we kept driving. We didn't stick around to fight because we're medics. We're support. We're not fighters. So we left that kind of stuff to guys like you. And but turn around in Afghanistan. 2 years later, I was with the infantry, with the 101st, and I was with you guys, infantry, doing infantry missions, searching out the bad guys, taking them down, and doing all that. And it was very much difference, not only the terrain, but the mentality of the enemy. I believe, in my opinion, was vastly different. And in Iraq, they would take shots when they could, and they obviously set up the IEDs and try to do what they could with that. But in Afghanistan, not only was it the IEDs, I mean, we had a few instances that firefights were initiated with IEDs. But if you remember, most of the firefights we were involved in Afghanistan were started by RPGs. So they would shoot an RPG at the trucks because we rode in smaller elements. Iraq. Again, I can't speak for everyone, but what I saw and what I experienced were larger convoys. I mean, you'd have 10 to 20 trucks in a convoy, whereas our time in Afghanistan at Morales Fraser, there were 3 trucks. Save those handful of missions when we went out with, the Marines and the French and all that. For the most part, it was just 3 trucks. You can fit a total of 5 guys. Not that we ever had 5 guys in a truck. It was usually 4 guys. So you figure you're going out there 12 guys at a time. And the enemy, when they set up, they were very, in my opinion, I'm not a historian by any means, but they were sophisticated in the sense that they knew what they were doing. They would wait, they would attack us, and then it was very few times. And from what I remember in the brief times I took contact in Iraq, it was one-sided. You drive down a road, it's open on both sides. It might be a building off in the distance, but you were taking fire from one side of the road, so it was very easy to just continue driving, and then you'd be out of. And they were everything that I experienced at my. There were some instances at Kutzbach that obviously you weren't there for, but when I say fanatics, I don't mean to speak to the religious aspect of it, but they were fanatics in the sense that they would literally sit there and pull the trigger against us until they were no longer physically capable of doing so. So it wasn't like they'd be injured and that the enemy would take care of their own and evac and maneuver. And no, these guys would find a place to hit us from and Afghanistan and just sit there and dig in. And then they would I God, Morales, Fraser, and Kutzbach both, but I mean they would call in reinforcements. Because you after all the time in combat, you get pretty keen as to what weapons are firing at you. You can make the distinction
Oh yeah.
between the PKM and AK-47s. Obviously, RPG is totally different, but and you could gauge the size of the element of the enemy, and if we were 3 trucks deep and we were in contact, you'd have a rough estimate like it's 6 to 10 guys, if that. But you could tell the different sounds of the different weapons. And then, 20, 30 minutes into it, now you're taking fire from another flank, and there's an additional, maybe another 10 to a dozen new weapons that you hear. So what started as contact by 6 to 10 enemy combatants is now turned into 2025, and then another 20, 30 minutes goes by and there's another 20 enemy that show up, and next thing you know, you're surrounded on 3 sides, and you're in a firefight for 1, 2, 3 hours, and these guys are just absolutely relentless. And one of the vivid things, again, I'm trying not to drag this out, but one of the vivid things I remember as a medic, and I believe it could have been Morales Fraser, it could have been Kutzbach, I don't remember the exact element I was attached to at the time, but I very vividly remember advancing on the enemy position because the firefight, the enemy fire had died down, and so we could move forward and advance on the position. And when we got to the position, I think it was Kutzbach, but all that I came across were some vials of their medicine and bloody rags and bloody clothes. And there are no bodies, but they had sustained some wounded on their side. But then, as you advance and you drive because there's mountains all around, so you end up driving into a position they don't have anywhere left to go, and so then they will, drive the locals out of the village because we're advancing on them, and then they just sit in that compound and just fire on us and maneuver on us. And it was a whole different ballgame, man. Iraq was just flat and pop shots and hit or miss. And like I said, my personal experience at the time, we drove through it. It was nothing to us. Like, oh, yeah, okay. They're shooting at us from over there. We're driving 50 miles an hour. We'll be out of range in 90 seconds. You know what I mean? It was nothing. But Afghanistan, I mean, they would hit us, disable a truck, do whatever. We dismount. There's 12, 15 of us. And then, time goes on and they're calling in their reinforcements just like we are. You guys empty the base and come to help each other. And there's 3 squads of us and there's 3 squads of them. And that's when we call in the air support because we have that advantage over them. The air support fire on the enemy because it's just, I mean, you remember there were a few situations that it just got overwhelming and it got too much for us to handle by ourselves on the ground. We had to call in the
those
air assets.
Air assets. And we've done that many times.
Yeah, it was just two totally different balls.
Yeah.
It's just like I said, the mentality and not to speak on the religious aspect, they were fanatical, man. They would shoot till they died. Because Iraq, it was just happenstance. If they had an opportunity to take a shot at us, they would. If they hit us, they hit us. If they didn't, they didn't. And it seemed to me their mentality is that they didn't care. That they cared that they tried. Whereas in Afghanistan, they were 100% trying to eliminate us with everything they had. They weren't playing around. They weren't there to just scare us. They were there to really take us out.
Yep. Absolutely. Awesome, man. No, I appreciate it. So, just kind of transitioning out of it, and thank you, man, for amazing stories. I just want to touch on as we're doing all motion, try to touch on the mental health And just briefly, I want to touch on a few things. And again, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Sure, bro.
And this one's tough. It hits home for me personally, my own immediate family. But I know that when you got back and get out the military, you had some people that you know very close in your hometown that sadly and God rest their souls, that unfortunately took their lives. So, you know,
Yeah,
the reason why I speak about it, just that not just the military, but and just in general, it's a horrible thing that happens, and you have loved ones asking the question is why. Um, so, if you mind sharing, cool. If not, I respect that. But also, want to tie in, obviously, since you have that medical background. Um,
yeah,
the military, it's pretty. The last VA statistics is still pretty high. In terms of active duty veterans and you know people in the reserves and National Guard that take their
yeah.
lives every day. So just wanted to see if you have anything before we shut it down here that you'd like to touch on with that.
Sure. I mean, it's yeah, just like you said, it's a subject close to you and close to myself. And you know, man, I have, and personally, I have struggled with mental health issues related both my deployments and even things not related to anything in the military, just life before the military and life after the military. And I've struggled. I've been in some dark places and I've needed some help. And unfortunately, I've lost some brothers um, that have made that decision to take take their own life. And it's one of those things we'll never know the reason. Whether there was a note left or not, we'll never really know what was going through their mind. And the only thing I can speak on really is if you're, man, it's a tough one. It's a tough subject, but I know that when me personally, when I'm in those places, when I have been in my dark places in the past, it's hard to reach out for help because you're in that dark place and you feel alone and you feel helpless and you feel as though you're a burden on those around you. And those thoughts are very intrusive. And, for me personally, some of it has to do with combat and just life. Life is, man, life isn't easy. Everybody struggles, civilian, military, everybody struggles. And one of the hardest things I think humans have just as a species, it's just so hard for us to ask for help. I don't know why that is. I don't know the reasoning behind it, but I think, and some more people than others are really that's a thing they struggle with. And I myself have struggled with it. Obviously, unfortunately, you and I have both lost people that have struggled and have made that permanent decision. I just, to anyone listening, I just you ever get to that point, no matter how hard it is and no matter how alone you feel, I'm sitting here telling you that you're not alone because I've been there. I've not to be too dark with it, but I have made some attempts myself, unsuccessful. Um,
Oh, well, I'm sorry to hear that,
which
man. Thank you for being
count.
so very honest
Yeah,
with us.
I because it's really important, man, and just humans in general. It's a tough subject, and I think as men too, it's even tougher for men to reach out because we're taught from an early age to hold things in and not be emotional, and there's just such a stigma around mental health in general, be it male, female, civilian, military, you name it. There's just a stigma on reaching out and asking for help with people. And to that, I say bullshit because I think some of the strongest people that I've ever encountered in my life are those that have known they needed help and have, asked for help and have sought it out and have climbed out of that dark pit of depression and whatever struggles there may be in someone's life. Um, just reach out. and as alone and as sad and whatever you're going through. And I say this, that no matter what, I don't know how to say this, but it's just everything in this life is just so temporary. But I know it's heavy and it's deep and it's dark and it hurts and it's painful and you feel as though you can't go on, but you can't use a permanent do something so permanent as to end your life to solve a temporary situation. That's just not the way to do it. And I'll tell you this too, you know, those friends I've lost and some I spoke with hours, days, minutes before they made that decision. And you know, a burden that some of us that have gone through that situation that we have to carry. And again, you never know what's going through someone's mind. And I live my life this way, and I ask everyone listening, you included, that you just remain kind to people. You know, you really. I'm sure you see the inspirational little quotes on Facebook and the stories, but it's real life, man. It's real life, and everyone's going through something that we truly know nothing about. And you know, you just walk into the gas station tomorrow and get a Gatorade or a water, whatever you're doing, and you pass a guy that's exiting the door, just say hi, just smile. That right there could have been the thing he needed to not make a decision to alter his life and the life of those around. And so it's something I drive home to everyone, and I live my life every day. Is I man, the world can be ugly and cruel, and there is beauty in it, as hard as it is to find. But I ask that you're kind to your fellow human. We're only on this little floating space rock for so long. Why not make the best of it and be nice to those around you and make their days brighter and better? Because there's enough bullshit and nonsense that we all deal with that don't add to the problem. Be part of the solution. Be kind. Be nice. Take the time to listen to someone. And it even goes so much as to you allowing me the opportunity to come on this podcast and speak, and that's get my voice out there and have my story and a story that you and I shared together in Afghanistan, to be told, and that's therapy in and of itself. It's not something I have to keep in, and I have a brother that was there with me. So
Absolutely.
yeah, man, be kind to your fellow human, love one another.
You finished
There's
it.
enough bullshit.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. You kind of just finished it all up. The last few, I just wanted to touch on was, how can veterans reach out that have mental health or struggle with substance abuse? But you kind of just, you just touched on it, that one, and then also
I mean, there's a ton of programs out there. I myself went through a program a couple years ago, and it was life changing. And I'm by no means am I a saint. I still struggle. I have my issues. It's life, man. But when you get to that point and you need help, ask for it, because there's so much help out there. And I'm not here on this podcast to toot my own horn or do anything like that. But you may be aware that a few veterans in my town here that I live in, Owensboro, Kentucky, we started a nonprofit back in the winter. And so we're still, we're 9 months into this. We're still a brand new nonprofit, but we're called Veterans Empowered Together. And I think that name, we call ourselves VET for short, but the long name of it is really our mission, is that we're here as veterans to empower each other, to do better, to be better, and to lift each other up. And so that's our whole goal and focus, is to get veterans of all ages. I don't care, World War One, World War Two, Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, Iraq, Afghanistan. We all share a commonality in that we served. And some of those from previous conflicts, they didn't even volunteer for it. They were commanded and told they had to do it. It wasn't a choice they made, and yet they still did it. And so, we're all brothers and sisters sisters, and we're all together. That's our main focus, is to bring everyone together and to empower each other. And if there's someone struggling, we do what we can, and we have resources to lift them up and get them help, be it with PTSD or substance abuse or alcoholism or anything. There's a lot of things that veterans and civilians turn to in times of struggle, and some of those aren't the best and safest things for us to do, or the healthiest. And yeah, so I started that, and we meet once a month. We have a coffee and donuts once a month that we all meet up in the morning somewhere in town, and we basically just shoot the shit. And it's not like we don't sit around till I don't know, it's just everything. We make friends, we network. I run a business. There's a couple guys, gals in the group. They have their own businesses, and it's good for networking, and we're also trying to get out into the community more and do more and show, the community what our generation of veterans is capable of. As we all know, there's the greatest generation, veterans, and they went on to start businesses and have families, and they they were the ones that had the baby boomers, and unfortunately, there were some conflicts after that, especially Vietnam, that they came home and weren't appreciated, and were and it sucks. I couldn't imagine coming home from combat, going through what some of those Vietnam vets went through. And so what we do in our group is to just bring everyone together and bridge that generational gap, and to show our local community. We're just local right now, but we're just trying to show what we're capable of. We can go out and we can volunteer at the homeless shelter, and we can put on a fundraiser to raise funds for there's a veteran house at a local homeless shelter, so they house only veterans. Fundraise for them and get them necessary, bedding and money and food and hygiene products and all sorts of those kind of things to support them. That's our brothers and sisters, veterans.
And if anything, and moving forward, we can talk offline about it. But anything, like all, the podcast, All in Motion, can do to help, because something that personally I want to do, and then people that are involved also with the podcast that to do outreach, and definitely anything we can do. And like I said, we can talk more about it offline.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I didn't mean to sit there and plug it, but
no,
it's something
no.
I took.
No, I didn't mean it like that. No, I didn't mean it like that. I meant like, if because I'm not gonna lie, I want to grow the podcast, but at the same time, I do want to, have the opportunity to obviously help people at the same time.
Right, and that's really where I was going with it, is that I took my time in the military and everything I went through, and those dark moments after, and the struggles that I've gone through, and it's hard to find your way after you leave the military, and you don't know what you want to be, and you did all that, and now you're just back to square one, and you're nothing, and you're starting over, and you're much older. You're not 18 anymore. You're not, you don't have life figured out. And so I took it as a way to turn, not even just tragedy. I mean, it's just struggles, man. You take those struggles and you turn it into something positive, and the reach is there. If I take my struggles and I turn it into something positive, and through the positivity of me and a group of guys starting this nonprofit, we can then find the next guy or girl that's struggling and lift them up and get them to a better place, and then they can go on to do something, and it just becomes a whole chain reaction. And it all started with a couple of us veterans, that had that common bond, just doing better for ourselves and for fellow veterans, and as a bigger picture, our local community. There's a lot of good to be done in this world, and part of it.
Awesome. Hey, man. So you want to share how people can that listen, if they want to reach out, how they can get in contact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I know there's 100 different social medias these days. I'm a big Facebook guy, but I mean, if you look on Facebook, and I'm sure you'll tag my names in this, but you can go at I don't even remember my Instagram now. It's at Doc Band-Aid on Instagram.
I got it. I'm gonna post it too. I have all the things that we bring out the
Yeah.
episodes to.
So,
So yeah.
like I said, mainly I'm a big Facebook guy. Derek Doc Van Tuyl, and you'll have to post it because no one will know how to spell that name. But yeah, I mean, by all means, find me on Facebook. There's links to the nonprofit Veterans Empowered Together. We have a website, just veteransempoweredtogether.com. Easy. We're also the nonprofits on TikTok and Instagram and all those social. I'm on all of it. If anyone, and two, to go back to the mental health thing and not just a plug for myself. I've done this 100 times, and I've built resources and connections. And if there is someone that needs to reach out, they have questions or they're struggling or they know someone else that is struggling, and I have connections not just here in Kentucky, but I got people everywhere, man. And I am, Doc might have left the army, but I'm still a doc. I still do what I can for my fellow brothers and sisters, and it might not be on the battlefield, but when we come home, we're fighting a different fight, and that's in our head. And so with those struggles, I don't care if I don't know you, or you got a brother, or sister, a friend, a cousin, your mom's best friend's cousin's aunt's niece, whatever it is. I don't care. They can reach out to me, and I'll do everything I can in my power, um, get them linked up with resources wherever they are to help them. And even if they just need an ear for a minute to message or call or whatever it is, um, never hesitate. I always put my stuff out there. It's on my Facebook. Pretty easy to get a hold of. Except when I'm trying to line up a podcast with you, then I have 400 things I got to do every day.
Did I overcomplicate your life?
Not at all, man. You know what? You know what it was? Is it was one of those things where it was like, let's make this podcast. I'm like, yes, let's do a podcast. And it's like, all right, I'm going to email you this. And then I'm like, all right, cool. Today I got to work. And then my fiance has rehearsal for a show. And then tomorrow night I got to work. And then I got to go to, my nonprofit board meeting. And then I got to go do this. And then, it was just one of those weeks where I just, from 7 in the morning to 10 at night, had something to do nonstop. And so I finally, like today was the day I didn't have a meeting. I got out of work at a good time. My fiance didn't have a show or a rehearsal or band practice, or she didn't have to work late. So it was just the perfect day. Like it could not have worked out better. And I finally was just like, look, Thursday, I'm doing a podcast. I come home from work at 5:30. The rest of my day is spent doing a podcast. No one bother me. And it worked out great.
That's awesome. Hey, so any last words, remarks you'd like to say before we close it out, sir?
I just want to say thank you, man. Thank you for reaching out to me. Like we said, it's been a year, if not longer. And I
What would
think,
you say about all emotion? I never really asked you guys, and I'm not trying to plug myself or be, just kind of curious from you.
you know, I'm a straight shooter.
You're one of the best. You're one of the best listeners. I know I love everybody, even if it's one person that listens. But
Yeah.
you give me good, awesome, great feedback. So I just want to know, what do you like about it? What could we do better? And it's
I'll
cool.
give it to you straight. I think one of the things you and I talked about is that you know, the podcast market is so saturated right now, unfortunately. But what you're doing is not really common. Like I know this episode probably with me and you yapping, like it's been a long one, unfortunately. But every episode, you are bringing high intensity. You ask, you're a pretty good interviewer, man. You ask some really good questions that provoking, that get me to think, that get me to respond. Yes, I might be long-winded in my answer, but you're it's information and stories and knowledge that's getting out there. But what you do is each of your episodes are so vastly different from each other, but they're same in the regards that you're you, and you're a good guy to talk to. You ask questions, and you engage, and you're not the guy that's a veteran that's only interviewing veterans and sharing combat and other experiences. You're interviewing doctors that have gone through COVID. You're interviewing entrepreneurs and models and actresses and actors. doctors, and just all facets of life, so you're not holding to one, one, I don't know what genre, but it's not,
I
you're
can
not
help
the
you out.
same
Not to
old
be, I
podcast.
can not, and it's, and I get a lot of people, and I thank you for that. There are a lot of people, and then they say in the podcast industry, you need to have a niche or a niche. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, and I appreciate that. And you're
And I,
right.
and I think what you're doing, I don't think you necessarily have to have that a single market. And I think, because every you can't make everyone happy all the time, right? So if you have only military guys and girls on your podcast, there might be some listeners that fall off because they're like, man, I'm tired of hearing the same old nonsense. But then you're interviewing doctors and you're interviewing entrepreneurs and you're asking them the, all these questions. And so everyone, even me as a listener, we have that commonality of being combat together in Afghanistan and all that. But, I sit there and listen to the questions you ask some of these other guys and girls, and I'm like, man, I like that. I got something from that. I can take a little piece of that, into my life, and I can share that with someone, or whatever it might be. So I actually thoroughly enjoy the variety that you bring to the table in your podcast. That's actually, I mean, I really can't think of too many people that have the variety that you have, and I think it's appreciated. I think it's underrated and a little underappreciated. But I personally, it's something I really, really like.
Well,
And I
thank
like
you
the
so much.
questions you ask, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. I really do. Thank you so much. Well, Doc, thank you so much for taking the time to be on All Emotion, sir. And we look forward to having you back here soon. So I
Absolutely,
wish you
brother.
and
I
your
appreciate
family
you having me.
take care and be safe. And we'll talk to you soon, sir.
Right on. Sounds good, brother.
Thank you again, Doc. We did it. 3-part series, first of its time here on AIM. So thank you, sir. Really want to appreciate you, man. Seriously, for touching on the mental health there at the end. It means a lot. And thank you for the audience for sticking it out and listening. Really, really appreciate it. You can follow AIM and All Motion on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and many more. Stay tuned for many more amazing guests and powerful stories we have coming up. Again, this is Jake from All Motion. Take care and be safe.